session, current challenge with diverse curricula in schools in this modern world. My name is Gerald Hankerson. I am the outreach coordinator at the Council on American Islamic Relations, Chicago Office, Illinois Chapter here in Chicago, here as a guest and on behalf of the Muslim Civic Coalition. I also go by Brother Jihad, so if you see me throughout and you hear that name, that's the reason why. Definitely today, looking forward to an exciting conversation between our esteemed panelists who are all educators. And DEAI, Diversity, Equity, Accessibility, Inclusion initiatives pose a benefit and a challenge. On the one hand, they advocate for our Muslim American communities. On the other, they require that we all advocate for issues that may not align with our faith and practice. This session will help with understanding the differences between human rights and civil rights from all issues, including one that is pro-LGBTQI+, and other stances. We'll also include a walking the fine line that advocates for every child and family's rights while still maintaining our faith values. And again, this session is brought to you by the Muslim Civic Coalition. I'd like to start with each of the guests to introduce themselves, but I would like to take this opportunity to introduce each one. Dr. Seema Ahmed from National Louis University here in Chicago. Dr. Hamid Ghazali from the Family and Youth Institute. And Sister Fahim Beg from Digital Promise. And we'd like to go in the order for each speaker to go for about 10 minutes, followed by our Q&A. All right? And first up, Sister Dr. Seema.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear brothers, sisters, community members, educators, and leaders. You know, we are gathered here today around an extremely important topic, challenges we face as a Muslim community, a faith community, and the modern world that we live in. It's a mandate on us and our community to become aware and knowledgeable about the important public school topics and new legal regulations. So that's what we're going to be talking about. The point of my participation is that I'm a lifelong educator, Muslim American educator, to help us explore, become aware, and consider our roles as parents and community members. Across the country, we have more Muslim students in public schools than in private schools. So how have Muslims come to the table? It's through the Illinois Muslim Civic Coalition, and you've gotten some literature already, so this is gold. Take it home as such. First, Illinois was the first state in 2020 to begin to have the state legislature pass a law that required public school students to all learn about the contributions and history of Muslims in America. So that was personally exciting for me, having been an educator at that point, you know, over 4 decades, and 2 in CPS, Chicago Public Schools, was just paramount. And so we're grateful to the work of the coalition in Illinois. And to add to that, we've also now begun to observe Muhammad Ali Day along with Martin Luther King Day, I'm getting confused here. So while the importance of self-esteem is so hard to measure, we know that generations of Muslim students have gone through the public schools in the midst of a negative narrative around Islam and Muslims. So briefly, the other points of legislation are things like athletic attire, reverence for diversity, being able to step out of PE if you like during fasting, and the TEACH Act for Asian Americans. So, you know, we have research that's evident that in many public schools, the chapter on Islam and Muslims is skipped. So we know that one of the reasons for that is teachers don't always know how to teach that unit. So they skip it. So we celebrate what the work that the coalition has done, and we're happy about it. And you can find them. You have a website, so you can find them, and you can print this. I'm advising you, every parent and every community member, every grandparent, print and carry, or you have one now, the PDF that tells the American Muslim story. You see standing signs outside. This is important because we pass a law, we have to use it. So parents have to show schools that they're aware that this is true. This is not you, maybe we have to teach it. No, we have to teach it. Here's the American Muslim story, here's the website, here's information. So that's an inclusive curriculum law that we're talking about. And it focuses primarily on history and social sciences, working to incorporate the histories and the contributions of a variety of people and various backgrounds. Religious institutions, identities, disabilities, and it includes LGBTQ community. So that's the second part of the how the Illinois legislation affects our community. And so we have a section of the law that regulates that teaching. What are the contributions of the American LGBT community to American history, and how would that be taught in the classroom? So there are 6 states, New Jersey, California, Illinois, Colorado, Washington, and Nevada. And they don't all agree on what is the definition of inclusion. So in Illinois, so far, we find that some schools embrace the legislation and some schools do not. So it's up to us then to become aware of how and if our schools are really covering it, and then understanding what exactly that means in terms of how our classrooms might change. So we have to look at that as being inclusive and creating an educational environment that's worthwhile for all students. It's hard to imagine that we could approve one section of that, the Teach Act for Asians or Muslim contributions, if we were not going to accept the wide range of individuals that fall within the inclusive curriculum law. So with that in place, teachers in the state of Illinois will now be teaching and using lessons and using storybooks. As children in Illinois public schools, you know, we have not learned much about that. And so it's separating contributions from ideologies. But it will be something that will have an 8th grade efficiency tied to it. Now in Illinois, students will be able to opt out of some of those lessons, but you'll still be responsible for knowing. So, fine line, right? So we know and believe that every child from every group should be safe in their public school classroom from danger, from ridicule, from harm. And legislation is supposed to help us get closer to the true diversity, equity, and inclusion. This does not come without challenges. Managing our Islamic family values, Islamic ideology, male and female sexual identity, and the legislation just adds to the challenges of the Muslims, you know, and what we face in preparing our children to adhere to what we understand as Islamic practice, including a belief that if one experiences same-sex attraction, that one would not act on that attraction. So the inclusive curriculum legislation is different in the sense that from a school curriculum that teaches a sexual ideology. It's different from understanding sexual orientation and gender equity. And Christian leaders have said that it's possible that coming along with good feelings associated to contributions that might bring a mindset that would cause a lot of ideology woven into more topics in the curriculum. We also should note that there are new sex ed standards being developed in Illinois, and they are coming from the National Sex Ed Standards. So if I give you quick 8 points that might help us, let us take time to focus on our own understanding. Let us act, don't be caught off guard. Let us reach out, be in touch with libraries, schools, districts, administrators. In fact, maybe run for office. Commit. Remember, silence will only develop Something else will fill the void or the vacuum, and it might be outside the Islamic family or the Muslim home. 5, stay calm. Becoming angry or stressed is not the answer. 6 is develop a strong relationship with Muslim children. So we look to the imams and the mosques, and we want everyone to build strong relationships and help everyone understand. Be both reliable and available to our children within those relationships. And I say that twice, be reliable and available. We're not alone. Other communities are working through the same sorts of issues. The 8th suggestion is to discover, seriously, take this one very serious, discover how your school is working through the issue. So you'll understand and know. And hopefully you can have your voice become a part of it. Take a look at the books, and maybe you have to look at age appropriateness. You have to look at a variety of things that will affect, the whole picture for you. We don't want to be considered backward or hateful. It's not hateful to have a different perspective. It's okay. So in the lessons and the books, there are stories of children who believe that they are a girl or a boy in a body of the opposite gender. Children have been known to ask if they could change their gender, their sex. This is an issue of gender dysphoria. So we need to keep in mind not only the work of the coalition, but also civil society, Illinois Family Institute, and other organizations that can help us understand there's a difference between teaching all children deserve dignity, safety, no harm, no ridicule, and one that helps any religious group to adhere to their faith and their practices. So let us be Muslims who work to build an understanding among communities where all children are safe from that ridicule, danger, and harm. Thanks for giving me your attention. We understand as Muslims that we are never tasked with more than we can handle. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will help us, and maybe there's some things we don't understand yet. We have to work to ensure the safety of all. While as Muslims, we also ensure that we are paying close attention to the duties and responsibilities that we have as parents towards Muslim children. And in that, we ask for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's guidance. Thank you. Alhamdulillah.
For those who are just joining us, again, thank you, Jazakallah Khair, for sharing the space with us. This is, again, current challenge with diverse curriculum in schools in the modern world. Next, we'll call up Dr. Brother.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make this a blessed day for all of you and a learning experience. What a wonderful opportunity for each one of us to really learn from different scholars in different fields, and you have a choice to go to this workshop or this session and that session. But one thing that I want to bring to your attention is that you really want to take some points that are life-changing for you and for your children. Think of ideas that you can implement. Today's topic, my name is Hamid Ghazali, by the way. I run a school, been supervising several Islamic schools as superintendent, and also I have my own school, Houston Quran Academy, which I founded. Alhamdulillah, it's one of the top schools in the nation with an SAT score, average score of 93 percentile. And we graduated 75 half of the Quran. So you can think of it as a typical good Islamic school that is a model for other schools as well. Then how are we going to handle an issue like the issue that we handle today, LGBTQ? So definitely that is a challenge. The other day, a few weeks ago, one of the parents, a mother, called me and insisted to meet with me. And then when I hear from her, then she came in and she expressed anger and, that she was not comfortable with one of the children who moved from the public school to our Islamic school, talking to her child and the other children in 5th grade about this issue, LGBTQ. So she was very concerned, and she didn't know what to do. And I assured her that we'll deal with the issue and we'll find solution to this issue. And honestly, it's not an easy issue because we have human rights on one hand, we have religious rights, but we have also the law, ethics, and religion. Ideally speaking, law and ethics should all be going in the same direction, but sometimes they depart from each other. Needless to say, religion is the third component that should be aligned with these two. But definitely from a Muslim perspective, me as a principal of an Islamic school and I teach the Islamic ideals and so on, that is not an easy question because it is against the teachings of Islam, the teachings of Judaism, the teaching of Christianity and others as well. So how are we going to balance these, issues that we have? That is the problem that we have. I relate a lot to the Quran. And I study the Quran and teach the Quran. Alhamdulillah, I studied it very well. And I have a tape for every surah in the Quran, deriving lessons from each one. So I'm very familiar, very comfortable with the Quran. I spent years studying it. So I really look at the Quran and this LGBTQ issue, and I try to find the justification from an Islamic standpoint of view. Can't find it. Okay. However, I can find respect for human rights, for people to choose whatever they want to choose. I can find that clearly in several passages of the Quran. La ikraha fi din, no compulsion in religion. Everybody is free to choose whatever she wants, whatever he wants. Everybody free, absolutely, to choose the way you deal with your life, excuse me, the way you want to be. But definitely, there is an Islamic choice that we want all our children to follow, which is the Quranic model that we have. If somebody chooses something else, we show respect to that choice. We don't ridicule people or put them down for any reason. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us in the Quran, وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ وَحَمَلْنَاهُمْ فِي الْبَرِّ وَالْبَحْرِ وَرَزَقْنَاهُم مِّنَ الطَّيِّبَاتِ وَفَضَّلْنَاهُمْ عَلَى كَثِيرٍ مِّمَّنْ خَلَقْنَا تَفْضِيلًا. Allah said in Surah Al-Isra, we honor the children of Adam. Honor them. We carried them in the sea and in the land, and we preferred them definitely and certainly above other creatures. So the Islamic stand here from all the human beings in general is respect. We think of every individual as honored by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be a human being who can make decisions, who can look at the issue and say, I choose this. That is what Allah made us different and unique than other creatures. That ability to make a choice, to make a decision. That's one of the points. Another point that I want to bring to you, when Prophet Muhammad was moving from Mecca to Medina, from a religion that relates to the individual and building your own character, building your own beliefs and ideas, to an individual who will be mixing with others and living with others who might not be able to share or not sharing the same beliefs, the same principles, the same values. So when the Muslims were about to leave Mecca to Medina, Allah sent to them Surah Al-Kahf. And in Surah Al-Kahf, we see a very unique example that is relevant to us in today's discussion. Al-Abdul Salih, Al-Khidr, in the books of Tafsir, wanted to teach Musa alayhi salam lessons from the Quran. So among the lessons that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us is this story. Al-Abdul Salih makes a hole in the shell. And then Musa objected. No, you shouldn't do that. Though he gave him his word earlier that you don't utter, you don't object, you don't say a word as long as you follow me. But when Musa alayhi salam said, when Musa saw that, he said, well, you have done something terrible. So Al-Abdul Salih taught him that it is very important to be silent. And at the end he explained to him, a ship with a hole in it is better than no ship. Because there was a tyrant king that takes every good ship and confiscated for himself. So we learn, the Muslims, what's the moral of the story? You're going to go to a different environment. You're going to face life where black and white is no longer there. There's always a gray area. There's always issues that you have to make decisions that are not aligned with your beliefs 100%. You were in Mecca and the belief is clear and everything's clear. Now you're going to go to an area like us over here where we have to make decisions and weigh the consequences. There is no black and white. And this is one of the issues that I had. That I was looking at the legal issues, how Christians and how Jews and others are handling this. In one of the universities, a Jewish university, didn't want to open LGBTQ an office or carry their paper and they don't want that to happen. And the case was taken to court. I conclude with that. The case was taken to court, and the court didn't know what to do. In Colorado, the same thing. There are issues where the court itself is up and down, right and left, because there is no absolute, clear answer to these issues. The bottom line is respect every individual, respect the religion, respect people to choose whatever they want to choose. If I want to choose to be a Muslim school that teaches the Quran, please respect that. I will respect you as well and deal with you as an honored human being, as I indicated from Surah Al-Isra. Thank you. Inshallah, we'll talk more. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum. Again, for Alhamdulillah, I keep seeing more people come in, so very happy to see that people are interested in this conversation. Again, the topic, current challenge with diverse curricula in schools in this modern world, inshallah. We'll have our final speaker, educator, Sister Farheen Beg.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. So we've had great speakers. So I want to just say that, I hope I can add to what they have said. But you have a panel here with a lot of years of experience and knowledge. So my name is Farheen Beg Mohammed, and I'm a director of student impact with an organization called Digital Promise. And I'm going to read off my notes. I just want to let you know because we are on a very strict time limit. So what I do with my, what our organization does is that our goal is to shape the future of learning and advance equitable education systems by bringing together solutions across research, practice, and technology. And the reason I tell you that is that's one of the main reasons I go to work every day, because I know that organizations like mine are shaping the future of education. And I want to make sure that Islam and Muslims are represented. So I currently have a portfolio of about 150 schools that I manage across large urban districts and very rural communities as well. And it never fails. The first thing, when I walk into those schools is that I will have one child, at least one child, come up to me and say, "Are you Muslim?" And then they just look at me. They don't have a follow-up. They're just surprised and shocked that there is somebody who's standing in front of the class. She's wearing hijab. She's in a leadership position and she looks like me. So to me, I feel like that is the best thing I can do for dawah, just showing up, just the presence alone. And that's another reason I want to advocate for all of us to look at different fields to enter in, because we need representation in all of the fields. And so my talk, again, like the other speakers, will focus on what we can do to further the Muslim agenda, to further education for our youth, before we can start to eliminate or censor any of the education they're receiving, because there's so much work that needs to be done to just represent Islam and Muslim communities in our public school sectors. The three topics that I have been asked to focus on is the training, effective training for teachers, the impact of technology on our youth, and the easy access to technology, and then some next action steps. So let me just start with training. The reason I think I've been asked to talk about that is because my organization, again, Digital Promise, it was launched during the Obama administration to bridge that digital divide that we see with students across the nation. Not all of us have the same resources. Here in Chicago, we have a large, diverse community, lots of suburbs with good financial funds to provide all of this technology, but it's not the same across the nation, right? So our organization that is funded by big tech organizations like, the Zuckerberg, Gates, Dell, Verizon, Mackenzie Scott, who comes from the Amazon organization, they are funding my organization because they want to make sure that technology gets in the hands of every student, and with that technology should come training. So that's what we do. We kind of, give these schools, we kind of hold this little prize for them called devices, and they're attracted to come to us. But in return, we say, well, you can have all of these devices, you can have all this free technology, you can have the Wi-Fi, but your teachers need to be trained. So that's how we get into the schools and provide the training. But I have to be honest, we have topics that are called equity as a mindset. And we do talk about access and how we need to be inclusive to everyone, but there isn't any training that is happening that speaks specifically to address the issues that come with marginalized communities like the LGBTQ, like Muslims. That training doesn't exist right now. So my second point about the training is that, again, going back to my original point, our presence alone is the dawah. And that's the best form of education right now that I'm providing in education sector, is just by showing up. So, it would be possible for us to eliminate certain topics. But I think what the Muslim Civic Coalition is doing by focusing on including topics is a better agenda, a better goal that we have that will get us further than focusing on what we can eliminate from our students. So when I talk about showing up, this could come in many different forms. In public school, you can show up to your child's classroom at any time. You just have to ask. You can actually even ask if you want to provide training to the teachers on Islam. Let's say Ramadan is coming up. You can connect them to you can connect them to local Muslim authors. You can, really, it doesn't hurt to ask. And by you saying that, it should not hurt your relationship with the teacher. It should not hurt your child's relationship. It should not hinder their success at all, because you have the right to do that. You have the right to go into those classrooms. And then second, having said that, don't be afraid to express yourself. So have open and honest conversations with your teacher so they do know where you stand on issues. You have to let them know, the community that you're coming from. Now, I'll be honest, as a former public school teacher, former public school administrator, teachers don't like to isolate students or censor what they're learning. They're more open to allowing other different communities to come and speak. But once you say, I want to take my child out of a certain thing, that's where there could be a little bit of conflict or tension. And that's where the teacher questions, why she has to learn about your culture, why her classroom has to learn about your culture when you're not willing to learn about other people's culture. So that is what I have seen from non-Muslims, that's when the non-Muslim teachers would come to me and say, why can't so-and-so learn this? I'm confused, can you just explain it to me? And so before you do that, you need to consider the implications to your child, to your child's learning, to your child's relationship with other peers, and even the teachers as well. So now let me just move on to the topic of technology. That is my area of focus because I am a former director of technology at a public school district in Chicago here. So the goal of the United States government, the U.S. Department of Education, organizations like me, where I work, the goal is to provide more and more technology to students. Open up the resources. There will be some urban schools that will allow for cell phone use. They have open YouTube. So your child at school will have access to all of that technology, and the goal is to provide more and more. So knowing that, you have to realize that we have to use this technology for good. So I'll give you an example. There's all of this technology that makes parents a little bit afraid of screen time. But that same technology could teach your child coding. That same technology could teach them about AR, VR, artificial intelligence, all of these new technologies that are coming. And we need Muslims to be represented in those fields as well, right? Like, for example, when facial recognition technology came about, and it was implemented in certain industries, and we realized that it became inherently racist, right? So I often think about who was behind the computer designing that? How come we didn't think of that? And think about what artificial intelligence does. Like when you're writing an email in Gmail, and it suggests the next word for you, right? It tries to literally read your mind. Who's programming that? Are there women voices behind that? Are there Black voices behind that? Are there Muslim voices behind that? Literally, we have computers and robots that are putting words in our mouth as we type. Who's creating that? So I would say don't be afraid of technology. As long as your child is not a consumer of technology, but a creator of content. So we don't want them to just sit there and consume, we want them to produce as well. So just, I want to just talk about your rights because I only have a minute left. But as far as your rights, yes, you can go to your school and you can fill out a curriculum objection form. It's online on the website, so you can fill that out and you can request your child to be taken out or removed from certain lessons. Again, that is your right, but you have to think of the implications. You can also ask your school to give a report about your child's internet activity. There will be a full report. They're even alerted to students when they act inappropriately online. That is also your right. But you can also demand full transparency from the teachers about the curriculum and that you can ask for the lesson plans. So you have that right, and all of that should be posted ideally on the school's website. Once you are in the know, then you can make the right decisions as a family and what works for you and how you can approach the schools to make sure that your children are welcome and in an inclusive classroom. Thank you very much.
Jazakallah khairan. I'm very happy to see that we have some questions that have come from the audience. We want to pose one first and then definitely be able to address the questions that's presented by you. So shukran to each of you that presented questions. One of the things that I was hearing that there's a certain need for language, right? So even for us to have the term DEAI, diversity, equity, accessibility, inclusivity, these are things that we are more in the conversations about in terms of us approaching whether it's education, whether it's policy, whether it's just connecting with one another. So I'm curious in terms of where you, Dr. Hamid, you may mention we can look to the Quran and don't see any particular relationship to the the LGBTQI place, there's nothing in the Quran that speaks to it, but there's this expectation to stand up in allyship and solidarity from these type of communities. So how would, you know, a Muslim family or a Muslim student be able to approach with that sort of expectation to be there for others if certain language isn't there, particularly the proofs of the Quran and other types of things?
That's a very good question. As far as the Quran doesn't have anything about LGBTQ, it does. Many places, okay? And the answer is clear. There is no room for it. So I just have to be clear. We have to state where we stand as Muslims, as from the perspective of the Quran. That is very clear. But on the other hand, how do we deal with other people who do not believe in the Quran, who do not believe in what we have? That's another issue that we teach our children in the school. One of the courses that I teach, for example, and I teach it in more than one school, Islamic philosophy. Who we are. How are we different from others? How can we contribute to the success of the country? Okay? And within that context, we help everybody. It's our vision as Muslims, who we are. Why did Allah put us here? Allah put us here on the earth for a purpose. Khalifa. Who's the Khalifa? Khalifa is the one who acts on behalf of somebody else. We as human beings, we acting on behalf of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we are supposed to make this earth the best place for everybody to live in. I'm talking what I say in the class. That includes human beings, Muslims, non-Muslims, everybody. People who believe in the Quran, people who don't believe in the Quran, people who believe in your values, disagree with your values. You there to help them. Second, animals. Third, plants. And there are tons of evidence about caring about the environment in the Quran. وَمَا قَطَعْتُم مِّن لِينَةٍ, for example, when the Muslims were in war and they cut part of the palm tree, Quran objected to that. You see, there are issues about the animals and the rights of the animals, and there are chapters about the rights of the animals. And definitely that's, if this is the case with the plants, with the animals, how about human beings? That's where we show respect. That's where we serve. That's where we offer our services, our whatever we can, with no distinction between a Muslim and a non-Muslim. That's where we extend our hands with others. That's where Allah was teaching the Muslims in Surah Al-Kahf, that you go there, the environment is not going to be Islamic 100%. You work and you find ways to work with others. So there are, you as a representative of a Muslim civic coalition where you bring diversity, equity, and so on. It's our job to learn from you, extend hands to other organizations to see how we can help everybody, including the LGBTQ.
Shukran. I have two questions from two educators that are in the audience. And so I'm going to pose it to the sisters as well, but feel free to answer. So one question speaks to the expectation that as an educator that they have to pretty much teach, sort of like, again, a reference to the curriculum that's now state law here in Illinois and other places. So this teacher is from a non-Islamic school in Northern California. He teaches 4th graders. How do they approach that? And the other question comes from an educator. What should the response be if a student or even a coworker or for other students, a classmate comes out and are looking for their approval? So, you know, we're now in this era where if you don't, right, then you're automatically silenced or penalized in whatever way. So what are some suggestions for that?
Sure, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So as a professor of 27 years, and before that a Chicago public school teacher, I've had issues very similar to this, and it's a very fine line, but it goes with what Dr. Ghazali was saying. As a teacher, so far the law, California and Illinois, and some others that I mentioned, do require you as a teacher to teach the contributions and the place in history of the LGBT community. So you can do that without saying that I'm in total belief, but you're showing compassion for those contributions, that human beings from all walks of life have made contributions to history and to our community. So that's your role. I've often said that in my place of work, my institution as a professor, that we all look at all the differences, religion, Jewish, Christian, Muslim, and many other religions, Jains, Buddhists. We don't have to agree with everyone else's religion or ideology, LGBTQ. We don't have to agree, and we don't have to promote. I don't have to promote the Jewish faith and teach it. I can do about without disregarding, teaching about without disregard, informing without, being rude or ridicule. And I think that's, the important part. Now, you came to another question about what do you do if someone comes and says, I'm lesbian or I'm gay, and your whole class is now going to have to do something, and you're the teacher. You have to accept the child for who the child says they are, and work with them. You may conference with them outside of the class too, because you're responsible for the well-being of the student, so you can't react, because if you react, if I disempower someone in my classroom, the class feels empowered to disempower that person in my classroom. So it's a very important role that, that teachers play. Language, all of us, parents, community members, teachers, educators, administrators, every single one of us needs to learn a language that is showing respect and concern and compassion. Well, we have the Prophet's model of compassion. When people did wrong, the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, allowed things to happen and dealt with it later. So we need to understand that that's a role we're going to have to play. Understanding, reading, thinking, getting on Yaqeen Institute and studying. We have to be knowledgeable. We have to be readers of different perspectives. And I think that maybe I answered some of that question.
Maybe in addition to that, there are areas where we can work with others who disagree, including the LGBTQ. Elections, for example, human rights, for example, lots of violations for our human rights, but we'll find that those who are sympathetic with us, work with us, we find common areas where we work together with full respect, you see. I don't have, as Dr. Seema was saying, I don't have to agree with your beliefs to work with you. We can work together, find solutions to our common problems, you see, and that is an area that we can find a lot of room for that.
Let me just add one more thing. Every person sitting in this room is a potential relative of someone who's going to say, I am a lesbian or gay or a transgender or a bisexual human being. We have to be prepared for the challenge, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us some tools that we understand and some of we don't understand. We need that very specific education and knowledge, deep knowledge, to know that we're not going to say, goodbye, you're out of here.
Yeah. And the Prophet ﷺ, when he went to Medina, first thing he did, was to make an agreement with all those who disagree with him, okay? And the coalition of Medina to protect Medina. And that included everybody in the city, you see, at that time, regardless of how far their beliefs are from the Muslim belief. We work together to protect the country, to protect the city of Medina against any other danger that may come to the Medina. That should be our stand, where we stand with others, everybody as Muslims, to work together for the welfare, the benefit of this country, and the human rights, the preservation of the human rights for everybody to be free to choose whatever you want to choose.
I was just going to add one
Oh,
more
please.
thing to
The
that.
next question for you too.
Oh, okay. So
I was going to say that as a public school teacher, I ran into this issue all the time. I remember, I taught many subjects. The year that our government, killed Osama bin Laden, and had declared that his body is found and all of that, I had to go to school the next day and teach class. And that year I was teaching social studies, 8th grade social studies. And the students didn't want to talk about whatever was planned for the lesson that day. They asked me specifically, Mrs. Big, how do you feel about this? So as a teacher, we know that the perfect teacher in pre-K to 12 is not one that lectures, is one is a facilitator. So I didn't have to say my opinion at all. I said, well, how do you feel about that? And of course, classroom full of 30 non-Muslim kids, there were many that said, I am so happy, yes, we got him finally. And then there were kids who spoke up and said, how can you celebrate death? You're going to be happy that there's death and war and destruction in this world? And I just sat back and I let those students express themselves. So I didn't have to express my ideology at all, because the place was for the students to have that discussion. And sometimes that's the best lesson, when they teach each other. But I don't want to oversimplify this. As a public school teacher, you're definitely going to run into these issues, because our children, our Muslim children, will have teachers that are gay. Our 4th graders can come back and say, oh, Mom, today in ELA we were able to go to the library and get some books. And the books they bring back is about a child that has 2 dads. And they instantly pick that book up. And you're going to have to address those issues. So I'm not saying that it's going to be simple. As parents, you will continuously have to talk to your kids and talk to your teachers and be involved in their education. So I don't want to oversimplify it, but the bottom line is that we will have to be civil and we will have to be inclusive so that we also can be represented.
Spot on. We're actually over time, unfortunately. No. This always happens when it's a great conversation, and particularly the state issues such as these. But we'll throw this out there anyway. So for those who want to stay, no one got up. So I want to be respectful for the next if there's another panel afterwards. So there's a few questions that actually have, again, it's sort of that trope of, again, expectations and how to go about respecting, because that's something that each of you spoke to, respecting other people's self-identity, choices, things of that sort. But I did mention for you specifically, Sister Fahim. So the questions about digital technology, if it has more harm than benefit, and explain how it could be beneficial for children to use devices and can't really make out and apologize for the rest it says. But another question to that same link, we're now in a common practice of identifying pronouns and things of that sort. So just kind of want to tie that sort of in and just saying, like, how do we really move forward? We know it's going to be more advanced, more ideas to kind of help us or not, keep intact with our dean and respect for others.
Really good question. So as far as technology, it will be taught more and more in school. Textbooks will be eliminated. We know that, and so you're going to have to do what actually the teachers are doing with screen time and taking the focus out of just consuming the media and making the students become the creators of the media. So if there's a child that's interested in, just going through Instagram all the time, you can take that child's interest and teach them photography and graphic design. If there's a child that's gaming all the time, you can, show them apps that they can use to create games. So they aren't always, just playing them, but also involving their mind. Again, that could be oversimplifying the situation, but the teachers have been told that the technology must be used so students can learn to communicate, be creative, be critical thinkers, and learn to collaborate so that they can be college and career ready and be ready for that global marketplace where they have marketable skills. And your child does need those skills so that they can have a job. So that is the main focus of the teachers when it comes to technology. But yes, does that mean that the internet is open to your child? It is. There are filters available, but every child in school knows how to bypass those filters. So you cannot depend on that. It comes back to you talking to your child and having open conversations, asking them what they've been exposed to and how that made them feel and what is right and what is wrong. And being involved with your child's teacher and asking them. But again, you can go to those schools and ask for that internet activity report. You can ask for the list of all the books that are available in the library. You can make those demands, but the most powerful thing that's going to happen is that conversation between you and your child.
Jazakallah khair. There was two more questions, and I'm going to close with this very briefly, and anyone can answer. I'm going to combine them. Just looking for a balance between public school curricula on the topics like LGBTQIA+, and balancing our own Islamic perspective. And the other question spoke to, how do we talk with our children when they're exposed to the stories or even lifestyles of those who identify LGBTQIA+.
I think I can start. I think it's very important to teach our children who they are. What makes you different than others? Doesn't mean that you're elite, but where do you agree with others, where you disagree with others? What does your holy book, the Quran, and the teachings of Prophet Muhammad teach you to be? You see? That should start early in pre-K and K and elementary school, so that when they come to middle school, they are trained to deal with these issues. And that's what we do in Islamic schools. You can imagine how much flood is coming to us from the public school after this issue came in. And actually, we reach our maximum capacity in my school, for example. We have a long waiting list. Why? Because people are scared of these issues. So it is very important to really teach our children who they are first and how to work with others second.
Anyone else? Yes.
Yeah, just real quickly, I would just add that let us all focus on an Islamic worldview. Everything you see in your life, you put it your lens of my Islamic worldview and see it and analyze it. Help your children begin to do that. With this knowledge that you're gaining, is it useful knowledge? You may learn some knowledge that's not useful, but you park it somewhere. You keep it and you don't focus your whole life on it. So teaching that, bringing us back to the aspects of the Quran, bringing us back to what the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, taught us, means that your whole life is probably what it should have been. Maybe we weren't so focused because we weren't so challenged. And this is going to be what? The engine that builds a better Muslim family. Inshallah.
Good note to end on.
Well, with that concludes. Let's thank our guests, Dr. Sida, Yaqeen, and Dr. Amin. Jazakallah khairan for joining us, and definitely enjoy the rest of the MSA.
Nice to see you. And brothers are here said.